Hey everybody, it's Brian Asbury, and I just wanted to welcome you to today's episode. If you could, like today's episode, hit that subscribe button, and let's continue to grow the developmentally speaking brand. Today, my guest is someone that's graced your television screens for the last 20 years, from Tough Enough to Impact to Ring of Honor. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Kenny King. Kenny, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great, bro. How are you?
Good, can't complain. I'm going to ask you a question that you've probably been asked a million times. What made you want to get into professional wrestling?
um, I didn't. I didn't want to get into pro wrestling. I was a fan, been a fan. Probably, I think I watched my first pro wrestling match. I was like 5 or 6, I think. So I was a fan my whole life, but I wanted to just kind of get on MTV, and
Hmm.
Tough Enough sounded like a really cool thing. I can remember in my dorm room my freshman year in college watching Tough Enough and being watching the people that couldn't jump rope or like the guys couldn't jump over bags, being like, "Oh my God, I can do that!" You know what I'm saying? And just then having the opportunity to do it, I kind of wanted to just do it and get on MTV more than I wanted to actually like be a pro wrestler. Not that I didn't love pro wrestling, but it wasn't really something that I was like, oh man, I'm passionate about this and I want to do it.
Hmm.
It kind of happened because I I saw Tough Enough and I was like, I wanted to prove like the people that were on it weren't athletes and I was a way better athlete.
Hmm. So, like, as Tough Enough went on, it just seemed like it got watered down. Like at the later seasons, it wasn't what one and two and three was. What was the process like to go through Tough Enough? Because obviously we see one version on TV, but then like, what was it like going through all of that to get selected and then going through Tough Enough?
I mean, I will say this, like it wasn't a cliche. They definitely were trying, and then the world was different. The business was a different
Hmm.
place. The world was a different place back in those days, and it was really to see if you were tough enough. Like if you were mentally tough enough, if you were physically tough enough. Every aspect of the process was, whether it's all right, you're here at 6 o'clock in the morning and you're gonna wait all day long to see just if you can get in the ring and for 5 minutes, that's a mentally tough thing. Then if you were, you know, um, interesting enough to get chosen to come back out of all those people, then we strapped 25 pounds, or it was actually 15% of your body weight. So it depends on what you weighed. That's how much was in these book bags. So now you're going to run straight up a freaking mountain in Las Vegas, and then we're going to yell at you, and then those of you that are crazy enough to get selected, then we're going to just beat the hell out of you for 9 weeks. So it was definitely a tough process. It was not physically or mentally an easy process. It was great. It was still a lot of fun,
Hmm.
but I can remember there being a lot of mornings where I'm like, why the hell? Like I longed for 2 days on the
Hmm.
football field than getting up, going to tracks to get beat down all day, and then go do military style fitness on the beach at night. So
Hmm.
like it was not it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy at all.
Any particular moments stand out more than others during your time there?
I mean, it was just it like the whole thing. Like I watched it with my girlfriend a couple of weeks ago because it was on Peacock, and she was like, "Tough Enough, weren't you on that?" And I was like, "Yeah, it's on there." So we watched it. Um, and uh, it's what I think about is I like the camaraderie, right?
Hmm.
Like I still talk. Like I just saw Hawk like 2 weeks ago. He was in Vegas and we hung out. So I built bonds with people that for better or worse, will never go away. And just the whole aspect of it when I look back at like my wrestling career and like
Hmm.
that was the beginning of it. Like that what was just a TV show or just kind of like a reality stunt for probably 80% of the people that did it who went on to do things. That was the beginning of my wrestling career.
Hmm.
Um, so I look at it like that. My match with Chavo toward the end was probably the thing that stood out the most because I can remember him saying, "Yeah, like they want us to do the very basic stuff. But me and you were going to do this," and like being trusted by Chavo Guerrero to be like, "I feel like I can lead you through a more advanced match," and that's kind of how I felt was like the thing. All right, this is for me. This is what
Mhm.
I want to do. This travel. If I can get through a much more advanced level match. I mean, at that point it was still very basic, but it was way more advanced than what the other contestants were doing. But to get trusted with that early on
Mhm.
was probably like the turning point where I was like, yeah, I want to do this. This is it.
So after Tough Enough, what made you pursue it even more? Was it something you truly fell in love with? Were you going to show WWE that they should have picked you all along? Like, what was your motivating factor to continue your career after Tough
Well,
Enough?
it was a number of things. One, it was that
Hmm.
like you didn't pick me, I'm going to show you. Two, I had moved to Las Vegas to play football, and UNLV was kind of like, hey, okay, because Tough Enough was aired early 2002, and then I was supposed to go back and report to like spring camp 2000, spring 2002, but I was still on TV, and at that point I was pretty much sure I won Tough Enough. So I'm like, bro, I'm not going back to play football. I'm gonna go get this WWE contract. So I may or may not have burnt a few bridges, not wanting to go back and play spring football when I thought that I'd won the WWF contract.
Hmm.
And it was, man, and the most important thing was like I was bit. Like they talk wrestlers, we talk about being bit by this bug.
Hmm.
At that point, having gotten so close and being feeling like I'd found something that I really want to do, there was just no going back really to doing anything else. Like I was selling timeshare at that. Oh no, actually I wasn't. I was in school, but I went to started selling timeshare to support my wrestling habit because I
Hmm.
was like, well, I need to eat and and buy wrestling gear. So how am I going to do this? And so that was really what it was. I was kind of stuck.
Hmm. Where did you further your training at, and when did you start working matches?
So there was a thing that was going on, like with the first season of Tough Enough, and even into my season, where people would come on because we didn't learn how to work a match
Hmm.
or really a whole lot. We learned the basicest of the basics during Tough Enough. So what was happening was a lot of these people from the first season and lots from my season were just going out thinking that they could just get booked at the Indies, and they were shitting the bed. It was terrible. It wasn't good, and they were getting there was a reputation that people were starting to get. So I got a phone call. Well, not a phone call. Jeez, I got an AIM message. That's how long ago this was. Jeez, from a guy named Buffalo Jim in Las Vegas, and he's actually he's an Unsolved Mysteries episode. What happened to Buffalo Jim? Buffalo Jim was like a carny wrestling promoter in Vegas, but he sent me a message like, "Hey man, if you want to keep training, why don't you come here?" And then about a week before, I was like, "Yeah, I think I'm gonna make it." Because I can remember waking up at like 1:30 in the morning and seeing like Buffalo Jim's wrestling on cable access and watching it, and then looking at it like, "Oh man, that looks like a lot of people there." But when I really looked and like blinked, it was people drawn up on the wall. So I was like, whatever, man. Like I don't know. I need to find a place to wrestle. But then a week or so that before I decided to go there, I got another AIM from another guy who he was like, "Hey, don't go to Buffalo Gyms. Come here." And it was a place called the Las Vegas Pro Wrestling Academy, and it was the best decision I ever made. Like that was like, uh, I mean, there I got trained by like Nick Bockwinkel trained us with promos, Scott Casey trained Booker T, and a whole bunch of Cowboy Scott Casey, and that was where I kind of did like my finishing school for wrestling training. So I did that, and they did shows there for Friday nights in a warehouse behind the Rio Casino and Suites. Every Friday night I wrestled shows, and I did not take a paid booking for a year
Hmm.
after Tough Enough because I didn't want to be the guy who sucked from Tough Enough. I wanted to be the guy who was actually, oh, that I remember that guy, he was good, and then he's still good. So
Hmm. So
that's
how
kind of
what?
what.
Go ahead.
No, I'm saying that was
Uh,
that was the bridge between like Tough Enough and starting on the Indies.
so how was it trying to like expand from you train in Vegas and then expand out? Because it's not. I don't feel like maybe I'm wrong, but it probably wasn't as accessible back then to just go all over the place. It was probably a lot harder to get
Yeah.
your name
Oh,
out
yeah.
there.
It was very difficult. It was those are the tape days, right?
Hmm.
Where you had to tape. You had to put your tape together, and you had to send it in a Manila envelope, which in one with the bubble wrap, because so it didn't get squashed. And half the time, these guys are opening your tapes and just throwing the shit away. Like,
Hmm.
so um, it was, and this is what I tell my students, like, no matter how good you feel like you are, you need to go away from your home base and go wrestle guys that you've never wrestled, and do this and go and just be places where you've never been, where nobody's ever seen you, so and try to get a reaction.
Hmm.
That's how you know that you're good. You're getting good, is where somebody who's like, who is this guy? I'm indifferent. Will either cheer you or boo you by the end of your match. That should be your goal. Um, so it was. So I remember getting booked in California, because Hawk. So it was a team Tough Enough, and then a guy named David Floridia. Shout out to David Floridia, who was actually Sumi Sakai's husband. Um, but we trained together in Vegas, and he started getting me booked and started. He's like, "Hey man, come with me, and I'll get you booked." So I started getting booked a lot in SoCal, and some in NorCal, and then like the UPWs, like the old Rick Bassman, developmental, where John Cena and Samoa Joe and Chris Daniels and all those guys came from. So I started getting booked out there, getting booked a little bit in California, in Arizona. So I was Phoenix. So Arizona, Utah, and California was like my where I would go get my
Hmm.
bookings. There was not. I mean, Vegas is different now. There's a lot of places where you can work in Vegas now, but there was nowhere. I mean, it was just the UWF where you could run shows every night, every Friday at the Rio, but you certainly weren't getting paid. So yeah, so driving to California, West Covina, Jesse Hernandez, he had a little promotion out there. Um, so that's where I started really kind of just branching out.
Where do you feel like when you started to get your name out there? When did that happen?
That probably happened when I moved to Florida. Because I moved to Florida because the East Coast at that point, like around '05, '06, was really just like there was nothing. I mean, PWG, like I did like a few like the beginning, like preliminary PWG shows, but it really
Hmm.
wasn't even Gorilla wasn't a thing back right around the time that I left. Um, but everything was on the East Coast. IWA Mid South was hot, Ring of Honor was hot, CZW, um, and it was just one of those things where, like, if you wanted to get anything kind of going on, you had to be accessible to the East Coast, especially like the Eastern, like the New England Seaboard, that area.
Hmm.
So I moved to Florida to and the Florida scene was hot too. It was a pretty good amount of indies. FIP was really hot, and that was a feeder system for Ring of Honor. So really it was I moved because I was I lived in Orlando before, so I moved back to Central Florida because so I could kind of get an idea of get to FIP, get to CZW, get to some of these Eastern promotions. So that is kind of when I really felt like I started getting my name out, because that's when I first did like my first couple stints with TNA.
Hmm.
Was around '06, where I was doing like short job matches to Ron Killings and Abyss and Monty Brown and Jeff Jarrett, and I probably jobbed every top guy in that company in '06. Um, but that was the beginning of Kenny King
Hmm.
starting to get like some kind of a push, some kind of a name.
How were those early years in TNA compared to today?
Um, I feel like I've been through in three different generations. I mean,
Hmm.
those days it was different. It was I was a green boy, man. So I'm just trying to get and to my very first booking at that old TNA, I got it from one of my Tough Enough castmates. A wonderful lady by the name of Jess. Who's Jess? Well, her name is Jess Champa now. She's Tommaso Ciampa's wife. But Jess was one of my good friends. They're Tough Enough, and still just a great person. Um, she called me, and she was like doing PA, and
Hmm.
she was like, "Hey, listen, I know that you're in Orlando. Can you come in and take a chair shot in the head from Raven?" I was like, "Hell yeah!" And that was I think that was how it started. That I got a chair shot from Raven, and then the next week I was wrestling Abyss, and then it just kind of went on, and it was just it was cool. Like I remember watching TNA. I loved the separate entrances. I
Hmm.
loved the exhibition, and I wanted to get a shot at like wrestling those guys, but it just wasn't. Uh, I was just kind of enhancement talent at the time. Um, so it's the thing about Impact TNA. It's always been the locker room has always been what drives the company, what
Hmm.
drives the like, even in the Dixie era where there was mistakes being made left and right, like we take one step forward, two steps forward, but then we take four steps back. Like um, the locker room, the heart, the passion, this talent of the locker room is what has made that company. I mean, it's the reason why TNA will die.
Hmm.
Is because the locker room has always been filled with insanely talented people that refuse to let it die. So
Absolutely. How was when your time came to go to Ring of Honor? How was that experience?
It was that was also, a dream and a goal for me because at that point I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get into TNA the way that I wanted to.
Hmm.
So I was like, well, I want to go into Ring of Honor because that's where that's where you went to Ring of Honor to be a wrestler, right?
Hmm.
Like at that time, the wrestlers were in Ring of Honor. Like, the big bruisers were in WWF or WWE, and you know TNA was kind of figuring out who they wanted to be. Like the X Division was cool, but it was still kind of muddled by, you know, X this guys and X that guys. But Ring of Honor was where wrestling was happening.
Hmm.
Like you wanted to be a wrestler. If you can't wrestle, you can't come here. My very first match in Ring of Honor as a contract, I went to a 15-minute or 14 minutes and 59 seconds with Brian Danielson. That was
Hmm.
Gabe Sapolsky said, you got 15 minutes. Like if you're gonna stay, you're gonna stay. If you're not, you're not. And so, I got thrown to the Sharks my first night. Um, and that was it. And that was where I was like, man, okay, this is where the wrestlers are at. And that was the experience, man, getting to go in there and that was kind of at that time where people were kind of going through Ring of Honor burnout because the shows were 4 hours long and
Hmm.
every match was 15-minute balls to the wall, kill 'em matches. And that was the mentality. The mentality was like, okay, well, you ain't gonna outdo me.
Hmm.
And that was it was really cool to be a young, hungry wrestler at that time with those dudes at Ring of Honor because you had to bring your best every
Hmm.
single night. There was no substitute, or you'd get left behind because everybody was going hard every night.
That's the one place everybody wanted to be.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
one place everybody wanted to be, and if you couldn't wrestle, you knew not to even try.
Hmm.
Just don't even come. And there was a lot of guys that and that was the one thing too. Like there was a lot of the next thises and the next that's that came through Ring of Honor and
Hmm.
came and went because it was a camaraderie in the locker room, but it was a fierce competitiveness.
Is there anything you're most proud of during your Ring of Honor run?
Uh, you know, Lots of stuff. I mean, which one? The first one or the second one? I mean, I loved the work that me and Rat did with the All Night Express. I mean, I feel like that was magic. The the matches with the Briscoes and just the way we were able to tell these great stories and have these physical, amazing matches. I mean, getting to wrestle Jerry Lynn, getting
Hmm.
a program with Jerry Lynn like that, just that's still one of the top things that I think I've ever done in my career. Ring of Honor again, man, special, special, special time. Um, both times, I feel like both times were just really special.
What are you up to today?
Um, when is this gonna air?
It'll air Monday.
It'll air Monday.
Yeah.
I don't know what's gonna happen. I don't know yet. Don't know. There's a few announcements that need to be made. Um, and I don't know how that's going to work out, but there's some things happening.
Okay.
There's some things happening. So I don't know if Monday, if I don't know how many of the things will have happened by Monday. So I can't,
Okay.
but some things are happening. Just know some things, and some stuff will happen by Monday. But I don't know if all the stuff will happen by Monday. So I can't really put it on.
Fair enough. You've traveled all over the place. You've been on TV for 20 years. Is there anything? Is WWE still a goal for you? Is that a box that's not checked off?
Well, I think, I think as in ring, I think that I might be too old. Well, not might be. There's been meetings
Hmm.
about me, and I'm too old, so that's fine. I feel like that's kind of insane because everybody knows that pro wrestlers only hit their prime and they only get better at a certain age. But
Hmm.
I feel like WWE's, if you haven't been here by a certain time, I mean, look like what they try to do to LA Knight. Like LA Knight and I were supposed to go in at the same time. I was at that time making way too much money at Ring of Honor to want to go and sign a developmental contract, but
Hmm.
um, it it worked out for him. But even then, look what they tried to like look he's had to become undeniable. They tried to make him a manager. They changed his name. They took away everything that made him him until he until he left him absolutely no choice. So it's kind of a silly mentality that they have there. Um, but things you never know. Things can happen. I'm When my in ring career is done, there's always a whole host of possibilities and things that could happen. But as far as that's concerned, you know what I mean. I guess I'm too old to wrestle for WWE, which is it's fine.
Are you too old to wrestle elsewhere?
I'm not, but see, I'm not too old to wrestle anywhere else.
Fair enough.
So that's the beauty of pro wrestling is that
Mhm.
you know one man's old guy is another guy's superstar. So
Absolutely. You mentioned your students earlier. What's going on with that? Do you have a school currently?
well, yeah. So I mean, I don't have a school, but I'm the head trainers, one of the head trainers, I should say, at Future Stars of Wrestling (FSW) in Las Vegas. It's I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's one of the companies that's making a lot of noise out on the West Coast. We've trained had a hand in training. I trained Chris Bay, he's mine, but Sefa Fatu or Solo Sokoa came from there. Um, Lacey Ryan, was that her name? No, Zoe Starks. Zoe Starks came from FSW. We claim LA Knight, but he didn't. He was trained, but we claim him. Jay Vidal came from FSW. So we train we train guys to be TV stars. That's what we do at FSW. The the crop of guys that we have there is outstanding, and we're the only wrestling school. Well, one of the only wrestling schools. I think there might be three or four that has like capabilities to do we do TV classes where we'll run a 2 hour show on a Wednesday, and we'll run it like that for time and for match consistency, and we're preparing these guys to not just wrestle on the indies, but to wrestle on Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays and whatever day that wrestling's on.
Where can people reach out to you at?
You can reach out to me on all my socials. I think the Twitter and Instagram is Kenny at Kenny King PB2. I think. Yes, Kenny King PB2 is Twitter and Instagram. TikTok is what I'm working on my TikTok game. My daughter's been teaching me how to do it, but I'm pretty weak, so I gotta work on it. Is the official Kenny King, um, and that's it. Yeah, those are my socials.
If you had any advice to give to anybody getting into professional wrestling, what would it be?
Well, I always ask people why,
Hmm.
and then I listen. And the question is not because there's a right or wrong answer. Well, I take that back. The wrong answer is I want to be John Cena
Hmm.
and I want to make $10 million. Those would be the two wrong answers because there's only one John Cena and there's only a select few of us that ever get to make $10 million, right?
Hmm.
But um, anything else that comes from passion, that comes from heart. I've heard everything. Oh, this is what I used to watch with my dad. I've always loved this. This is where I feel free. All of that is applicable, right? Because it's a hard, um, emotionally abusive business,
Hmm.
and you have to be steadfast on why you want to do it before you jump into it. Because your mom, your sister, your brother, your girlfriend, your jobs, they're not going to understand why you want to do this. Only you, only
Hmm.
us. We only understand each other, and you're going to sacrifice a lot uh, to do it. And you're going to miss things. You're going to miss birthdays. I've missed daughter's birthdays. I've missed important things. When my mom passed away, I was on the road. So, there's things that you're going to give to the wrestling business and you
Hmm.
may never ever get back. But um, But as long as while you're doing this comes from a place in here that you
Hmm.
can get fulfilled, then go for it. Then love it, because you'll get it. You'll get
Yeah.
what you need.
And that doesn't mean WWE or bust. Like, I feel like a lot of people, if they get that mindset, like, they just miss out on the whole fun part of the journey.
Well, that's why I say the only wrong answer is if you want to be John Cena,
Hmm.
right? That doesn't mean that you don't want to be successful, but like that can't be
Hmm.
uh, your only metric of success.
Hmm.
You can be successful, and in so many different avenues in this business.
Hmm. Well, I just want to say thank you for taking some time out today. Thank you for what you do for professional wrestling and continue to do. Um, Tough Enough was a part of your life, but Tough Enough doesn't define you, and that shows how good you are and how good you've been all these years.
Yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's crazy that was. I mean, it feels like a lifetime ago, but then it doesn't. And
Hmm.
then but there's been so many other amazing things that I've been blessed to do in this business since Tough Enough. So,
Absolutely. And if there's anything I can ever do, feel free to reach out.
no, you likewise, bud. Likewise.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You got it, man. Take
Thank
it
you.
easy.
You too.